I always knew my sister's wedding wouldn't include me as the maid of honor. Kit and I had grown apart over the years, not by my choice, but by the careful orchestration of our mother, Vivian. What I never expected was to be excluded entirely. The message came on a Tuesday, sandwiched between a reminder about my dentist appointment and a promotional email from a clothing store I'd once shopped at. Hey Allie, about the wedding. We're keeping it really small. Just close friends and immediate family. Hope you understand. Love, Kit. I stared at my phone, reading and rereading those few terse lines. Close friends and immediate family. Last time I checked, sisters qualified as immediate family. I set my phone down on my desk at TL Global Events and Promotions, where I'd worked as an event coordinator for the past 5 years, and tried to focus on the venue contracts in front of me. The words blurred. 3 hours later, my colleague and friend Dana dropped into the chair across from my desk, coffee in hand. You okay? You look like someone ran over your cat. Kit's wedding, I said. I'm not invited. Dana's eyebrows shot up. The sister you helped put through college? The one whose rent you covered for 6 months when she was between jobs. That Kit? I nodded, the reality of it sinking in deeper. That's the one. What did your mother say? My laugh came out hollow. Vivian? She probably orchestrated the whole thing. As if on cue, my phone lit up with my mother's name. Speaking of the devil, I muttered, answering the call. Hi, Mom. Allie, darling, Vivian's voice was syrupy sweet, the tone she used when she wanted something. I need you to pull some strings at work. Kit's venue fell through. No, how are you? No acknowledgement of the text I'd received earlier. Just straight to what she needed from me. What happened to the venue? I asked, my event coordinator instincts kicking in despite myself. Bellamy Gardens had some structural issue. Very unprofessional. We secured the Hawthorne instead, much more suitable, really, but they're asking for an outrageous deposit on short notice. I froze. Bellamy Gardens was where Kit and I had spent hours wandering around as teenagers. Kit had always said she'd get married there someday, under the wisteria arch where we'd once found an abandoned nest with 3 perfect blue eggs. The Hawthorne, I repeated. The most pretentious venue in the city, catering exclusively to old money and social climbers desperate to join their ranks. Exactly the kind of place Vivian would choose. Yes, darling. I thought perhaps your events company might have a standing arrangement with them. Something you could leverage? For a wedding I'm not even invited to, I thought to myself. I'll look into it, I said instead, even as a cold suspicion began forming in my mind. Wonderful. Oh, and Kit mentioned she'd told you about the intimate ceremony. It's for the best, don't you think? Some people are made for supporting roles, dear. The call ended, but her words lingered like a bad smell. Supporting roles. That had always been my assigned position in our family drama, the reliable stagehand while Kit played the star and Vivian directed from behind the scenes. The next morning, I pulled up our company's client database and searched for Bellamy Gardens. We managed bookings for several dozen venues across the city, including both Bellamy and the Hawthorne. If there had been structural issues at Bellamy, we would have documentation. Nothing. No reports, no inspections, nothing that would have prevented a wedding from taking place. On a hunch, I searched for Kit's name in our reservation system. There it was, a booking at Bellamy Gardens for June 12, placed 3 months ago. And beside it, a cancellation dated just 2 weeks ago. I dug deeper, pulling up the communication logs. There was an email thread between Vivian and Bellamy's on-site manager. My mother had demanded a full refund of the deposit, claiming Kit was devastated by their unprofessionalism. The manager's confused response explained that they had no record of any issues discussed with Miss Carlton and they would need specific details of the complaint. Vivian's reply was curt, "My daughter deserves better. Please process the refund immediately." I leaned back in my chair, pieces falling into place. A quick search of the Hawthorne's availability showed they'd had a last-minute cancellation, a prime Saturday in June had opened up just days before Bellamy was mysteriously deemed unsuitable. The smoking gun came when I found an email Vivian had forwarded to Kit. Allie thought Bellamy was too down market for us anyway. You know how practical she is, always worried about cost rather than creating memories. My hand shook as I read those words. A complete fabrication. I'd never said anything of the sort. In fact, I'd been setting aside a portion of each paycheck for 2 years, planning to offer it to Kit for her dream wedding at Bellamy when the time came. Dana appeared at my desk again, this time with a concerned expression. Now you look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, I said. I've seen my mother's true colors. Again. I showed her the emails. Dana shook her head. Classic narcissist move. Triangulation, telling each sister a different story to keep you both dependent on her as the information gatekeeper. And now Kit thinks I'm the one who looked down on her dream venue. The betrayal stung all the more knowing how effectively it had worked. Kit and I had barely spoken in months, communication reduced to occasional group texts with Vivian always quick to respond first. Dana was about to respond when my work phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. Hi Allie, this is Wayne Landy. My father suggested I reach out about the Berlin account. Wondered if you might have time for coffee to discuss strategy? Wayne Landy. The boss's son. I'd seen him around the office occasionally but never worked directly with him. Rumor had it he was being groomed to take over eventually, learning the business from the ground up rather than stepping straight into an executive role. Looks like the heir apparent wants to pick your brain, Dana said, reading over my shoulder. Great timing, I muttered. My personal life is imploding, and now I have to mentor the boss's kid. But as I typed a polite acceptance, another message from Wayne appeared. Also, I overheard my dad talking about an inspection issue with the Hawthorne. Thought you might want to know they're due for a code review. Apparently, someone cut some corners on the recent renovations. I stared at the out-of-the-blue message, an idea beginning to form. Wayne Landy turned out to be nothing like I expected. No entitled heir apparent, but a thoughtful man with intelligent eyes and a quiet competence that suggested he'd earned his position through more than nepotism. The Berlin account is just an excuse, he admitted over coffee. Dad mentioned you looked upset yesterday, and I've noticed the quality of your work. Thought I'd see if I could help. That's unusually decent of you, I said, surprised by his candor. Don't sound so shocked. His smile was warm. Not everyone in this industry is playing an angle. Something in his genuine manner made me lower my guard. I found myself telling him about Kit, about Vivian, about the venue switcheroo and the uninvitation to the wedding. So your mother fabricated a reason to cancel the original venue just to move to a more prestigious one? And blamed you for it? Wayne looked appalled. Classic Vivian, I said. She's been playing Kit and me against each other for years. I just never had proof before. Wayne was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee. I'll jump right in here. We've been monitoring the Hawthorne for months. My father's been pushing for an inspection. They had complaints about electrical issues even before the renovations, but the manager keeps delaying. If something happened at Kit's wedding. I couldn't finish the thought. It won't, Wayne said firmly. Because you're going to help us expedite that inspection. How? We have a high-profile client looking for a venue that same weekend. If we submit a competing request, it will trigger an automatic review of all contracts. Standard procedure when there's a potential booking conflict. I considered the implications. And during the review, the safety concerns would have to be addressed. Wayne nodded. The Hawthorne would be temporarily closed for inspection and repairs. Completely legitimate procedure. No one could accuse you of sabotage. Kit would need a new venue fast. So would other people that booked there. He smiled. Fortunately, we handle all their bookings. I bit my lip, thinking. I could help with all of that. I imagine you already have a plan B in mind for Kit's wedding. Wayne's eyes held mine, and for the first time in months, I felt like someone saw me, really saw me. I might, I admitted. But I'll need your help. The plan worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. 3 weeks before the wedding, the Hawthorne was shut down pending electrical repairs and structural reinforcement of the new addition. The management and the general contractor had indeed been cutting corners. The inspection revealed multiple code violations that would take at least a month to address. Kit called in tears. Not to talk to her sister, but to leverage my professional connections. Mom said you might be able to help, she said, her voice tight with panic. We need a new venue. Immediately. Let me see what I can do, I said, keeping my voice neutral even as my heart raced. Can you and Mom come to my office this afternoon? They arrived looking like they'd stepped out of a society magazine, Kit in a cream designer suit, Vivian in her pearls and Chanel. I watched as they took in my modest office, Vivian's eyes lingering disapprovingly on the practical furniture and lack of ostentation. Darling, this is a disaster, Vivian began without preamble. The Hawthorne has completely let us down. Your sister is devastated. I nodded sympathetically. I heard. Such terrible timing. We need you to work your connections, Vivian continued, her tone making it clear this was an order, not a request. Surely this company can find a suitable replacement on short notice. I pulled up a document on my computer and turned the screen toward them. I've already looked into the options. Given the timeframe and your guest list size, there's really only one venue available. Kit leaned forward hopefully. Where? The Westside Community Center. Vivian's face fell so dramatically it would have been comical under different circumstances. A community center? For Kit's wedding? Absolutely not. It's actually quite lovely now, I said calmly. They've renovated the main hall, and there's historical significance, it's where Kit and I used to volunteer. That was ages ago, Vivian dismissed with a wave of her hand. Kit deserves a proper venue, not some charity case. I turned to Kit, whose expression was harder to read. Do you remember the wisteria arch in the garden? She nodded. Like the one at Bellamy Gardens. Yes. It's in full bloom this time of year and they also have community gardens now. Flowers, herbs, the works. Something flickered in Kit's eyes, recognition, maybe even longing. But before she could respond, Vivian cut in. This is ridiculous. We'll postpone if necessary. Most of your deposits are non-refundable at this point, I reminded her. Postponing means losing all the other vendors too, catering, flowers, photography. You're looking at thousands down the drain. Vivian's mouth tightened into a thin line. This is because you weren't invited, isn't it? You're punishing your sister. That was when I laid my cards on the table, literally. I placed printed copies of the emails between Vivian and Bellamy Gardens on my desk, along with the forwarded message claiming I'd called the venue down market. I never said that, I told Kit directly, watching her eyes widen as she scanned the evidence. I was saving money to help you have your dream wedding at Bellamy. Mom cancelled it because the Hawthorne became available. She's been lying to both of us. Kit looked up from the papers, her face pale. Mom? Is this true? Vivian's expression shifted from shock to indignation to calculated contrition with practiced ease. I was only trying to give you the best, darling. Allie doesn't understand how these things work. Social connections matter. Social connections, I repeated. Is that why I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding? Because I don't have the right connections? Kit had the grace to look ashamed. Mom said you thought the whole thing was wasteful. That you didn't want to come. Another lie. The revelation hung in the air between us. The community center is your only option, I said finally. I've already placed a courtesy hold on it for you. But you need to decide today. Kit looked at the emails again, then at our mother, whose face had hardened into the mask I knew so well, the one that preceded either rage or manipulation, depending on which she thought would be more effective. Book it, Kit said quietly. Vivian gasped. Catherine. Book the community center, Allie, my sister repeated, stronger this time. At least it won't fall down around us during the ceremony. The day of the wedding arrived bright and clear. I'd spent several days working with the community center staff to transform the space. White drapery softened the practical architecture, fairy lights twinkled from the exposed beams, and the wisteria arch stood resplendent in the garden, exactly where Kit and I had once shared secrets and dreams. I arrived early to oversee the final details. Wayne had offered to be my date, and I'd accepted, grateful for both his moral support and his genuine interest in helping make the day special. We'd grown closer over the past weeks, his steady presence a balm to my frayed nerves as I navigated my dysfunctional family dynamics. "It looks magical," Wayne said as we walked through the transformed space. "You've outdone yourself." "Let's hope Kit thinks so." I straightened a centerpiece nervously. "Vivian's been working overtime to lower her expectations. And spreading rumors about who's responsible for the venue change," Wayne added. "My father heard from 3 different people that you orchestrated the Hawthorne's closure out of spite." I sighed. Of course she'd say that. The good news is, no one who matters believes her. In fact. Wayne broke off as his phone buzzed. "Speaking of my father, he's just arrived. And he's not alone." I followed his gaze to the entrance where Mr. Landy waved as he stood chatting with a woman I recognized immediately, Elise Bennett, CEO of the architecture firm where Kit worked. "What is she doing here?" I whispered. "Dad invited her." "They go way back," Wayne explained. And when he heard what was happening, he thought having her here might counteract some of Vivian's negative spin about the venue. My heart warmed at the gesture. Whatever was developing between Wayne and me, his father's support meant more than I could express. The ceremony itself was simple but beautiful. Kit looked radiant in her gown, and her now husband Derek seemed genuinely smitten, his eyes never leaving her face as they exchanged vows beneath the wisteria. I stood in the back, Wayne's hand steady in mine, watching my little sister get married without me by her side. It hurt, but less than I'd expected. Something had shifted when Kit had seen those emails, a crack in the foundation of lies Vivian had built between us. The reception was in full swing when Vivian finally cornered me near the bar. She'd been avoiding me all day, focusing instead on ingratiating herself with the wealthier guests. "I hope you're satisfied," she hissed, her smile never wavering for the benefit of anyone watching. "You've made your point." "Have I?" I kept my voice level. "What point would that be?" "Don't play innocent." "The Hawthorne mysteriously failing inspection right before the wedding? You picking the most modest replacement possible? This is beneath you, Allie." "What's beneath me is putting up with you lying to my sister for years, telling her I thought her dream venue wasn't good enough when I was actually saving to help pay for it and making her believe I didn't want to attend her wedding." Vivian's smile tightened. "I was protecting her from your jealousy. You've always resented Kit's success." "It was success that I helped make possible," I reminded her. "Who paid her college tuition when the business Dad founded went to the grave with him? Who covered her rent when she was interning? Who believed in her when you were pushing her to date men for their bank accounts rather than pursue her career?" Before Vivian could respond, Wayne appeared at my side with 2 glasses of champagne. "Everything all right here?" Vivian's demeanor changed instantly, her eyes assessing Wayne with new interest. "You must be Allie's date. I don't believe we've been properly introduced." "Wayne Landy," he said simply, offering no additional information about his connection to the company. Vivian's smile remained fixed, but I could see the dismissal in her eyes. In her world, a man was only as valuable as his title or bank account, and without clarification, she'd assumed Wayne was just another employee like me. "How nice," she said with the faintest hint of condescension. "If you'll excuse me, I need to check on Kit." As she walked away, Wayne handed me a glass. "Your mother's a piece of work." "That's putting it mildly." I took a grateful sip. "Thank you for the rescue." "Actually, I came to tell you something exciting," Wayne said. "My father and Ms. Bennett have been talking about the center's youth program. They're impressed." I followed his gaze to where the 2 executives were deep in conversation with the community center's director, a former social worker named Cleveland who had dedicated his life to creating opportunities for disadvantaged teens. Kid and I used to work with those kids, I said softly. It's why this place means so much to us. Well, it's about to mean even more to them. Dad and Ms. Bennett are discussing a joint corporate sponsorship program. Year-round funding for the arts and job training initiatives. I nearly choked on my champagne. Are you serious? Definitely. They're making the announcement later with Kit's blessing. Wayne's eyes sparkled with mischief. I thought you might enjoy watching your mother's reaction when she realizes her down-market venue choice is about to become the pet project of two major CEOs. The announcement came during dinner. Mr. Landy tapped his glass for attention and spoke eloquently about the importance of community investment. Ms. Bennett followed, announcing a substantial joint pledge from both companies to establish permanent programming at the center. Applause erupted around the room. I watched Kit's face light up with genuine pleasure. This had always been her passion too, before Vivian's influence had redirected her ambitions towards status-seeking. And Vivian? Her expression was a study in conflicted emotions, outrage that her carefully orchestrated social climbing had been undermined, battling with the realization that she'd accidentally aligned herself with something the actual elite in the room valued. When dinner ended and dancing began, Kit sought me out, pulling me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, she whispered. For believing her. For not inviting you. It's okay, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. She's been driving wedges between us for years. Not anymore, Kit promised. Derek and I have been talking. We're going to set some boundaries after the honeymoon. We were interrupted by Derek claiming his bride for their first dance. I watched from the sidelines, unexpectedly content, as they swayed to the music. Wayne joined me, his hand finding mine again. Care to dance? We moved onto the floor just as other couples were joining Kit and Derek. The four of us ended up side by side, exchanging smiles as we danced. Your sister seems happy, Wayne observed. She does, I agreed. I think she's remembering who she really is, underneath all of Mom's expectations. From across the room, I noticed Vivian watching us, her eyes narrowing as she took in Wayne's hand on my waist. Later, when we were near my mother, Mr. Landy approached Wayne, clapping him on the shoulder. Having fun, son? Your mother would have loved to see this place transformed like this. Vivian's expression changed so fast it was almost comical, shock, reassessment, and then a calculating smile as she realized Wayne wasn't just any date but the heir to Landy events and productions. She made her way over to us with determined efficiency. Wayne, darling, she cooed, as though they were old friends. I didn't realize you were Thomas's son. You must come to dinner next week. I'd love to hear more about your work. The transformation was so transparent I felt embarrassed for her. Wayne, however, remained perfectly composed. Mrs. Carlton, he said pleasantly, 10 minutes ago, you could barely hide your disappointment that Allie had brought someone you deemed unsuitable to your daughter's wedding. Now that you know who my father is, suddenly I'm worth your time? Vivian's smile faltered. I'm sure I don't know what. Allie deserves better than that kind of conditional approval, Wayne continued, his voice gentle but firm. What I admire most about your daughter is that she values people for who they are, not what they can offer socially. That's something money can't buy. Vivian stood speechless, possibly for the first time in her life. Now if you'll excuse us, Wayne said, taking my hand, I'd like to continue dancing with this remarkable woman. As we moved away, I caught Kit's eye. My sister gave me a subtle thumbs up, her smile wider than I'd seen it in years. That was. I searched for words as Wayne led me back to the dance floor. Too much? He asked, suddenly uncertain. I'm sorry if I overstepped. Perfect, I assured him. That was perfect. We danced in comfortable silence for a moment before Wayne spoke again. I meant what I said, you know. About admiring you. The warmth in his eyes made my heart skip. Even though I orchestrated a venue inspection to exact revenge on my mother? Especially because of that, he laughed. Strategic thinking is sexy. Is that what we're calling it now? I'm calling it justice, Wayne said. And maybe the beginning of something unexpected. As the music changed to a slower song, I rested my head against his shoulder, allowing myself to relax into the moment. Across the room, Vivian sat alone at her table, watching as her carefully constructed social facade crumbled while both her daughters found authentic happiness. When we get married, Wayne murmured close to my ear, where do you think Vivian would want us to hold the reception? The presumption should have alarmed me, but instead it felt right, inevitable, even. I smiled against his shoulder. When the time comes, I told him, we'll plan our own wedding, thank you very much. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly free of my mother's manipulations, dancing toward a future I was choosing for myself. Please like and subscribe for more great revenge videos. We'd love to hear about your favorite revenge stories in the comments.